they're in their own world because they both understand this cycle, even though like their midwives haven't done it, their doula hasn't done it. Just the two of them can work together on this whole other level that everybody else isn't really there in that way. The two of them can really partner and get you through this.
This is a Journey to Birth podcast coaching session. I'm Tristan, the creator of the Natural Birth Compass online childbirth education program. And on this series, you will hear me help Starre, one of our Natural Birth Compass program students, preparing for her second birth after unexpected events required some changes in her first birth. Just a couple notes before we jump in. This is my third coaching call with Starre, and we covered a lot in this call. We'll catch up with how Starre is making small changes every day in response to discovering more about how her East type influences her thoughts and actions all throughout her day. We also go through some physical assessment and nutrition coaching, so I just want to point out that this section in particular is focused on Starre's individual physical needs, and this information is not to be taken as a recommendation for anyone listening to this podcast. Consult your healthcare practitioner before making any changes to your diet, exercise, supplements, or medications, especially if you're pregnant. And stay tuned to the end because we will address the importance of preparation for the birth partner as well. Well, that wraps up my intro details for this session. If you've missed any of our previous coaching calls with Starre, I strongly recommend that you go back and listen to those before listening to this episode. Now, if you're ready, I hope you enjoy sitting in on this call as we help Starre on her journey to birth. Welcome back, Starre. I am excited to dive into our third session today.
Thanks, Tristan. I'm really excited to be back.
So last time in our second coaching session, we covered a bit about how you felt during the pushing stage of your labor and why each of us thought that it might be the part that you felt most powerful in. And then we also went into how you're working on noticing when you're trying to control the uncontrollable parts of life and how you're finding ways to shift into a bit more of a relaxed state of being, trying to go with the flow a little bit more. We talked about the idea of the bamboo last time. Mm-hmm. So how has that been feeling for you this week?
Actually really great. There's two specific examples I can think of. One of them is we have kind of a standing invitation to join a family member for dinner on Friday nights. And we oftentimes go because it's, seeing family, some of the great grandparents are there, and I don't have to cook, so why not? But sometimes it almost feels overwhelming to have another thing on the schedule. And this last Friday, my husband's like, well, do you want to go? Do you want to not go? I was like, you know what? I was like, I think you should take Virginia, our daughter, and I'm just going to stay home. And for me, like it might not sound like a big deal, but for me to kind of just like go with what felt like needed to happen instead of what's expected of me or what is the most practical, because I'm so practical down to the point where it's like, well, if I had to eat dinner at home, it would cost me this much money. If I went there, it would be like everything has to be so practical in my mind. So it sounds so silly, but being able to like just be like, well, you know what? Like, let's do this. And it was so like enjoyable and freeing to be able to do that. And it's like a really silly example, but for me, it's a big deal because I am so controlling of just everything that happens. And another thing that's really hard for me is to let my daughter go places without me. And it's funny because as a mom, you're overwhelmed all the time and you dream about having your own time. But when it's presented to you, you're like, I don't know, but I'm going to understand what she's asking for more. And I'm going to make sure she eats dinner and just all of these things. So that's a big deal for me too, to be able to be like, you know what, it's okay. She will be just fine. She'll have fun. She'll eat dinner. She'll be able to do things like tell someone else she needs to go potty. She doesn't need me by her side at all times. So that was one thing that I kind of realized after the fact was very out of the norm for me. And the other thing is, it's funny because it's also like dinner and food related, but I've always worked full time in either a salaried position or had two jobs or gone to school and worked full time and been really, really busy. So being a stay-at-home mom since my daughter was 9 months old has been very different. And I treat being a stay-at-home mom very much like a job. And, if I'm here, like it would only make sense to have a clean house and have really great dinners. And like, this is my job. What else am I doing? So the last week, I have been very go with the flow when it comes to making dinner. And I'm usually like, I know exactly what I'm making the night before. I've already decided. And sometimes I'll ask my husband, like, oh, do you want this or this? And he's like, I don't know. That's too far away. He's not a planner. He hates planning. He's like, don't ask me to make a plan. So at some point during the day, I'll be like, oh, I'll just make this. And I've been making these quick, easy dinners that aren't a big production. And it's been so enjoyable. And both of those examples I just shared with you are kind of an example of two things that we talked about last session. And the other one was just like taking time for myself. Kind of what I have found is by letting go and losing a little bit of my control of things, I'm allowing myself to have more time for myself. So, like, I've been wanting to organize my pantry for literally 6 months, but because my house isn't always clean or I don't have all my other ducks in a row, I don't ever get to that. And so yesterday I made the quickest dinner that took me 15 minutes to get ready, and I didn't think about dinner. I was able to literally just spend my whole afternoon doing that. And for me, that's a really relaxing thing to do. Organization is something that I always want to do, but because I'm too busy, like making everything else look clean, that I never get to it. So it's funny, those two examples, it was like accomplishing both things. Like I was letting go of something and it was allowing me to put more time and focus on myself. So it's been a really enjoyable week, and it's been very eye-opening. It's been very eye-opening to realize that a lot of the stress and anxiety in my life is just because of the pressure I put on myself.
First, those are not silly examples at all. That's exactly what you should be doing, is noticing even down to these small, what seems like a small piece of your day, but these are big things that happen every single day, right? Like you said, it's taking a lot of your life to be trying to control all of these pieces and planning everything out. Now that you're stepping back and just letting things happen and being more in the moment and allowing yourself to be more spontaneous, you're actually more in control of the things going on around you. And I think that you'll find as you continue down this path with wanting to have things organized and wanting to have those ducks in a row, by stepping back and being able to take the time to do things like organize your pantry, in the long run, that's going to help you feel more organized, because you're getting down to all of those root things that are underlying all of the other things not being organized. Like when the cabinets are unorganized, but you can close the door so you don't have to look at it. Everything else you're just trying to put away to keep it from looking cluttered, but there's no real place to put anything. By kind of letting that go and getting to the root of organizing the house, in the long run, it's going to give you more control and help you to feel more organized. You're starting to see where trying to stay on top of all of the superficial things have been blocking you from getting to the underlying parts of it.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you should be doing, is noticing that all of these things now, so that it starts to become more obvious to you. Okay. And then by the time you get to your birth, you're going to know right away if you're going to that place of trying to control something you can't control. And instead, you're going to be able to step back and get yourself back in control of the situation, rather than trying to control the situation, which is two different things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm starting to see that.
Yeah, it's a slow process, but that's exactly where you see it, is in your day to day, how you're generally operating, how you're interacting with your environment, how you're interacting with the other people in your environment, with the things in your environment, with your whole structure of your day. You're really getting where those pieces are and able to restructure it. So it's exciting to watch.
Yeah, it's been enjoyable.
Excellent. So you've been going through the program, the Natural Birth Compass childbirth course.
Yep.
And so you have almost finished module 2 at this point, it looks like. Okay. So how is it going for you so far? Any big aha moments from that, or anything specific from that material that you want to go over?
So module 2, you say it in the program, it's a lot of almost like conceptual pieces that you have to try and put together. So I'm really excited to start module 3, because part of me is like, I don't even know if I'm getting this. Like, you're hearing all the information, but I'm like, okay, how do I apply all of it? The activities help. Even just in one of the activities was to kind of look at how the cycles appear in your life already.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really interesting. I'm going to sound like someone that is just obsessed with food because all of my examples come to that. But you're talking about like the cycles of eating and how we procure food and how it starts in the east and moves through to like actually like gathering the food and consuming the food. And I thought that was really interesting because when I stepped back and looked at my month and the way, so we have a monthly budget, and the way that I structure our month is I go and I do almost all of my grocery shopping within the first few days of the month. Like, I probably use 2/3 of our food budget in the first 3 or 4 days of the month. I go through this planning process, and then I go and I get the food, and then we usually have like more detailed and elaborate meals in the first half of the month, and then things kind of start to slow down. And by the end of the month, it's like, okay, we're just gonna like slowly work through what's still in the house and chill out a little bit more. Like, there's a different energy to the type of meals that I create and like almost the formality. And then I start to transition back into the time to start planning again and like doing the whole thing. And so that was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, that's really interesting. So I've really been enjoying stepping back and seeing how that cycle really does exist. And I've always thought of it as inconsistency. And so I'm really enjoying seeing like it's just a cycle of life, and we wouldn't always want to be in the east or in the south, and how those usually take more energy from you and they're not recharging you. And I've always thought of it, like I said, as more of inconsistency. And like, gosh, why can sometimes I do this and sometimes it feels like I need to do this? And I oftentimes would view it as a discipline thing, and you just need to be more disciplined. And that's why recharging, especially, is something that's always been a struggle for me. My husband, if he could get me to do something to relax, he would be doing backflips. Because he's like, you need a hobby, you need something that you enjoy, that like calms you down, that just slows you down. You can't just always do this. And so it's really interesting to see like, oh, it's actually really natural to have those things, to have those periods where you are working hard and you're really focused on something, and now it's time to come back around and like change the way you think and then ultimately recharge so you can do it all over again. And my life has been a cycle of burnout. It really has been. I mean, that's how I explain it, because I think I would do like, maybe I'd be in the east and then the south, and then it would be like time to transition to the west and the north, and I'm like, I can't do that, I can't do that. So I'd like jump over them, and eventually I just get really burned out. Any of my employers that I've worked for, any of my friends know that it's just like this cycle of burnout continuously in my life. And then I just find enough discipline and willpower to go and start the cycle all over again.
Yeah, that discipline and willpower is definitely a strength of the East. But when your East is overpowering everything else, which is definitely a pattern for you, then yeah, burnout is a big problem for people in the East, because you're always on that cusp of wanting to open up. You're the spring, you're the, the awakening, and calming down for you and going into that place is not exciting for you.
Right.
So I think that you're getting module 2 more than you feel like you're getting. And it's, it's a different kind of learning, because there's a lot of Eastern philosophy imbued in there, and it's not linear. In Western culture, we're used to learning very linearly. 1 and 1 is 2, and 2 and 2 is 4, and everything makes sense, and you learn A before you learn B. But in this Eastern learning and this more circular learning, it's more like a spiral. You keep building up pieces as you go. You learn a little bit, you experience it, you assimilate it, and then you learn a little bit more, and then you add the next layer.
Okay, yeah.
And so it kind of gets deeper and deeper as you go. So module 2 is definitely the toughest module, because it does feel very conceptual. And by the time you get into module 3 and you start incorporating it more into birth, and you'll be able to build it into your first birth experience, So you'll have even a little bit more tangibility for it than somebody who's pregnant for the first time. You're really going to be able to tie those things together. But I think that you have more of it than you probably feel like you do, just in the progress that you're making and really noticing these patterns and these habits in your life. And like even noticing the cycle of your month as far as organizing your food budget and your grocery shopping, like that cycle hadn't even occurred to me. Like you found that one by yourself. I'm not an East, so that's not my planning for the whole month is not my strong point.
Yes.
So I don't think I have that particular cycle in that way.
Right.
But so you're seeing things about yourself and your own habits that are following in this cycle that before you didn't see it.
Yeah.
Now that you have this kind of framework to organize things on, you're noticing things that are very specific to you that are based on that cycle and based on where your strengths and where your challenges are. So we know your East and somewhat your South are your strongest points, and then your West and your North are the ones that you're trying to work on. My intention with what you're doing in the course and with these coaching sessions as well is for you to find the permission to embody that West and that North and take that recharging time for yourself, which you have been doing this week. Taking time out, allowing your husband and your daughter to go have dinner with friends and family while you stay home and just have some downtime, do the things that you need to do for yourself, especially while pregnant. It's ever more important.
Yeah.
So I think that you're getting more of it than what you feel like. It's probably just a lot of information right now that, and then because it's that circular kind of information, it feels like you can't grasp it in the way we're used to being able to grasp things.
Yes, I agree.
But you're definitely seeing it.
Cool. Well, yeah, I am really enjoying the course and just being able to do this with you because it almost feels like life coaching mixed in with birth prep. And it's really great work for anyone to be doing that. I mean, really at any time and anyone, but for preparing for parenthood, if a first time mom was doing this with you, I don't know that I have ever heard of anything that would really prepare you in such a way that you're looking beyond just the childbirth. Most childbirth education is preparing you for one day in your life. So I'm loving doing this because it's so far beyond that.
Yeah, exactly. It is life coaching in the way that birth is just part of life. It's just another cycle, which is kind of what the whole course is about, right? If you can see these cycles in your whole life, then you know how it's going to work in birth and you can understand how that whole process is going to unfold. And then everything else beyond that, it just continues to be another cycle within kind of this overarching big cycle of our life, which follows the same cycle. We don't notice it happening around us or to us. So if we can just bring our awareness back to that through what we're already doing naturally, because we just naturally follow these cycles. So module 1, you went through as well with the foundations of the compass, where you got familiar with the other directions of the compass beyond just your East.
Yes.
And then how it presents in your day. We're going to go a little bit more into that today in regard to nutrition and some breathing exercises and things like that to help with getting baby in good position and make sure you're having the resources to build up good, strong contractions.
Yeah.
But any questions for module 1?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, everything you just talked about is all perfect. And I think what's on my mind, I'm really excited to talk about those things as far as nutrition and how I can potentially influence baby's position. The position is probably the thing that I'm most nervous about right now because right now the baby's transverse. And so I'm like, you need to switch your position. Like I'm waiting. While I totally believe breech babies you can totally have a natural childbirth. They also don't always decide to cooperate with that. So baby's position is one thing that I'm like trying not to stress about because I'm 26 weeks pregnant and the baby has a ton of time to move. So I'm trying to be patient, but I'm excited to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. 26 weeks, you don't need to be worrying yet.
I know.
But I think being proactive about it is always better than just waiting. So before we get on to that part, I do want to pick up with where we left off last time as well. Did you and your husband have time to talk about your visions of what you thought for this birth?
Yes, so we did, and that was really interesting because you can tell that we tend towards different directions. Because I mentioned in our last session together, I could give you a play-by-play about how I was feeling and what the room felt like and where we would be and every little thing. And his answer was so him, I was like, do you have, and I asked him first. So I was like, do you, like, when you think about the birth, do you have a vision of what it's going to look like? Do you have ideas of specifics? Like, what do you think about? And he's like, well, I mostly think it's just going to be pretty similar to the last one, but at the birthing inn instead of the hospital. And I'm like asking him all these specific questions, and he's like, I don't know, I wouldn't think about that. Like, he's the conceptual person. There's so many times where we've had conversations and I have literally told him, like, I can't think like this. This does not work for me. My brain has such a hard time thinking that way. So for him, he's kind of going off of what happened last time. And he's like, I think it'll be like that, but we'll know more of what we're doing. And we'll communicate with each other more. So we have been talking a little bit more about what the communication piece looks like, because we both feel like that is what we want to have a better understanding of going into this birth. But yes, his was very like conceptual and loose, whereas mine could have been, submitted to the military for for following a strict schedule. So that was interesting. And I had to, in the moment, I was wanting him to have different answers, which is a pretty normal thing. Like, I want more details. Why don't you have more details and more plans, So I had to, but I was really trying to let him just have his space and not seem like I expected an answer. So I had to, like, kind of just watch my heart rate and, like, it's okay. It's okay that he doesn't have a plan the way that I do. So that was just really funny for the most part.
Did you ask him what it would smell like and all that?
He does not care. He's like, I don't know. What does anything smell like? So then I kind of shared with him, like, oh, well, I'm planning on bringing the diffuser. Like, this is kind of what I want. He was like, cool. More power to you. Once I have it all packed, which I would assume will be in the next few weeks, honestly.
I would too.
Then I'll like show it to him and talk to him about it. And that's when he will be ready to engage when I have it ready. He does not like to sit there and listen to me talk about my plans. Because to him, that is totally pointless and overkill on the planning level.
Thank you so much for joining me for these coaching calls. I hope you're finding them helpful and are enjoying the new perspectives toward approaching your birth. If you would like to find out your Natural Birth Compass strength, you can take the very same assessment that our coaching clients and our Natural Birth Compass program students take, and you can take it for free. Download your copy of the assessment and guide at naturalbirthcompass.com/resources so you can identify your type and be more prepared for your upcoming birth with tips specifically tailored to your type. And now, back to our show. We are just about to get back to our coaching session with Starre. You're going to hear me go through some physical breathing and other exercises with her next, so I just want to jump in with a few quick things about this section because Starre and I recorded these sessions with a video, but since this is an audio-only podcast, you can't see what I was seeing when we recorded this. So I'm just going to catch you up. Now, the big thing that I'm working on to help Starre with is to help her relax her breathing and bring it down into her low abdomen by engaging her diaphragm and her core in the proper way. Because like many people, she's doing a lot of constricted chest breathing and holding her core too tight, trying to draw it in all the time. The problem with this kind of posture and this constricted style of chest breathing, especially with the growing weight of a baby, is that it causes imbalances in the core, in the low back, and in the hips, all areas that we really don't need any more imbalance than what they already are experiencing in late pregnancy. So you're going to hear me coach Starre through some exercises to correct these patterns. Around minute 27, you'll hear Starre connect to the idea of how she has been breathing with how she should be breathing. Now, I left more of this section in than I originally intended because Starre recognizes some significant things about her breath, and I think it's going to be helpful to many other expectant moms who will be struggling with the same issue to hear her work through this out loud. You're welcome to go through the same exercises as well, as long as you are experiencing a healthy pregnancy, you're not feeling dizzy or lightheaded, you're not on bed rest for any reason or experiencing any complications like a shortened or incompetent cervix or placenta previa, preterm contractions, or anything of that nature. If you're not sure if doing breathing exercises is safe for your pregnancy right now, consult with your prenatal care provider first. If you'd like to skip past the breathing exercises, we pick up with some nutrition coaching at around minute 40, and definitely don't miss the last 5 minutes where we talk about the importance of childbirth education for birth partners. And now we'll get back to our coaching session.
I think we'll do breathing first,
Okay.
and then a couple little exercise things, and then we'll do the nutrition. So I think I'm going to have you actually stand up for a minute, and then just take a couple of breaths. So on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being easy, 5 being really difficult, how easy for you is it to breathe?
Probably a 2.
Okay. And where do you feel that you're breathing at?
I feel it like in my chest and then in my lower abdomen.
Okay. So I'm going to have you put your middle finger on your belly button.
Okay.
And then I want you to try to get all of your breath down to where your fingers are right now.
Okay.
Does that feel any different to you?
Yes. Much more difficult.
More difficult?
It requires a lot of concentration, and it feels like a little bit more strained in the same area, kind of in my chest. So like where I felt it before, but it almost feels like more strained. It makes my abdomen almost feel full, like I really am giving the air to it. So that's interesting.
Are you comfortable laying on your back for a minute?
Yeah.
Take a few breaths laying on your back. Does that feel easier or more difficult than when you were standing?
It feels easier.
Okay. And where do you feel your breath now?
I really only feel it in my abdomen. It's like I almost don't feel it passing through my chest.
Okay. So you are definitely doing some chest breathing, and we want to try to get more of that down into your abdomen.
Okay.
So I want you to try to imagine bringing your breath all the way down to baby.
Okay.
And just allowing your stomach to expand out as far as it needs to. I think you're probably holding your stomach tighter than you need to be. Do you feel it changing?
Yes.
Okay.
It feels like I can actually take a full breath. I wasn't taking deep breaths before because I think you're right. I been like holding my stomach in with my abs. And so it took, I don't know, 4 or 5 times to like be able to really allow it to relax.
Yeah, that's really common. Most of us do that.
Yeah, that's a very different feeling to allow my abdomen to be so involved in the breath.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have you try one more step in this process.
Okay.
If you're okay, you already know what I'm going to say. Bend your knees. And then while you breathe, I just want you to alternate picking one foot up at a time with each breath and then putting it right back down.
Okay.
Only pick it up enough that somebody would be able to slide a piece of paper under your foot.
Okay. I already am in my head and like, oh, okay, I'm trying to like coordinate.
Just let your,
okay.
So I want you, the idea is to let your breath pick up your leg, but just ever so slightly.
That's really difficult for me. And
Yep.
it's really hard to I don't know, like it's really hard to allow my breath to stay deep.
Well, it was looking a lot better at the end. There was very little chest breathing at all. And it takes practice. Good. It'll take a few weeks to rewire your brain. So this is something that you'll be working on every day.
Okay.
Like in the morning before you get out of bed, just take, 2 or 3 minutes and just lay there and focus on your breathing. You can do the foot thing. Doing the foot thing, the idea behind that is that it's helping your brain to, when you're walking, you're going to start to fall into this pattern because you're working on connecting this little stepping motion with breathing into your abdomen instead of breathing into your chest.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, no, that, I mean, it definitely feels better. That even felt better trying it again just now.
Yeah.
Because it's surprisingly difficult.
I know, isn't it?
And it's funny because, so I was a gymnast for a very, very long time, and I coached gymnastics for many years after that, competitive gymnastics. And so everything I do is, in addition to my personality, it's like very rigid. I don't do like graceful movements. So it's just interesting. I think I'm usually so focused on keeping like all of my muscles tight. I think that's why it's so much easier for me to breathe like in my chest, because I've just trained myself over decades to always have my core super tight, that it doesn't feel natural to like use that in my breathing at all.
Yeah, that's super common. And often the more athletic somebody was, the worse they are actually with their core, because they're using their core in the wrong way. They're using
Yeah.
it to maintain that rigidity,
Mm-hmm.
but you're using the outer core muscles when you do that. The abdominal muscles, there's actually 3 layers. So the ones that you're tightening are more the rectus abdominis on the top, the 6-pack muscles,
Uh-huh.
and then the obliques a bit on the sides. But you don't get as much into the transverse abdominis muscle, which is the very innermost muscle. And that's the one that we want to have secure. That's the one that's going to help prevent any. Did you have any separation of
Yes,
your
a
core muscles
little
with your
bit.
first? Yeah.
I was in really, really awesome shape when I got pregnant. So my
Uh-huh.
abs did not separate at all until I was like 36 weeks pregnant. I actually remember telling my midwife, "Why does it feel like my stomach is literally ripping apart all of a sudden?" She's like, "Well, it
Mm-hmm.
is." But it didn't
Yeah.
happen until like the very, very end of my pregnancy. And then I did have like a little bit of residual diastasis, kind of probably like the inch and a half above my belly button.
Mm-hmm.
I could like easily fit 2 fingers in between it
Mm-hmm.
up until, I mean, till I got pregnant again. It's interesting though, I've never heard the ab layers talked about like that. And I've always been pretty physically active and even like I would say strong, but I've struggled with feeling like my core was really strong, and it might even like visibly look strong, but I've always felt like it wasn't. So it's really, really interesting that you bring attention to that. And the times in my life where I felt like I have kind of achieved that stability and core strength more than others was when I was doing a lot of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really
Yes.
interesting because I was probably doing a lot better like with my breathing and incorporating
Right.
those muscles. So I love that. That's like really incredible information.
Yeah, so the core muscles that we want to be focusing on, their primary role is in breath. The other
Mm-hmm.
ones on the outside are more for strength. So, yeah, so getting to that layer, pulling the diaphragm in, which is
Yeah.
where getting that breathing all the way down, and then that's going to work transverse abdominis muscle and the muscles in the back that help stabilize the back of the core. And
Yeah.
then next time we meet, we can talk about pelvic floor as well and start incorporating that into the whole breath work so that you're getting the full inhale and exhale part of the breath. But right now I want you to only work on inhale because we have to just reprogram that
Okay.
part for you as well. If you're not inhaling into the core all the way, then we're not going to be able to have you exhale from there. We have to have the inhale first.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Okay. Cool.
yeah. So continue to do the laying down with the foot thing. And then just throughout your day, like what I often will have people do is just have little triggers throughout their day to remind them to check in on their breath. So you can do that setting an
Okay.
alarm on your phone if you want, or if you have things that happen at pretty regular times in the day, then you can use those as a trigger. Like if people are still working on their commute to work, that can be a
Oh, great.
trigger, or their lunch break, that can be a trigger. So you'll have to figure out what's going to work in your schedule
Okay.
so that you just have a number of times that you're just remembering to do it until it starts to become more second nature. And watch yourself in the mirror too, because you'll see that
Okay.
your breath is up here, and we
Okay.
pretty much want no movement up here. We want all the movement down in the belly. So part of
Okay.
it is just allowing yourself to relax the core. We tend to want to keep it tight and constricted because we want to hold the belly in, right? Not have it hanging out, but it's really doing the core a disservice because we're closing off our diaphragmatic breathing and we're doing chest breathing.
Yeah, interesting.
Chest breathing is really a sympathetic response. It should be for when you're actually under some kind of stress or duress or strenuous exercise, where you're first breathing down into the belly. And then if the body needs more oxygen, you have all this reserve up here. But if you're breathing up here all the time, it is sending a little bit of stress response to your brain, and we want to get you out of that. So that's going to give more room in the belly and more room in the pelvis for baby to get positioned correctly. I'm going to have you try a couple more things for me so I can check a couple other aspects of more anatomy physiology.
Okay.
So any aches or pains?
Everywhere. My back has been the worst.
Which part?
Honestly,
all
most of it. When I wake up in the morning, like I told my husband this morning, it feels like someone was just in my bed kicking me all over my back all night. My whole back just hurt so bad. But I would say more often it is my lower back.
Okay. So if you're comfortable, I don't want you to do anything that's going to cause any pain. I don't think this is going to aggravate the low back. So if you're comfortable, I'm going to have you stand up again.
Okay.
And do a few squats for me in whatever way is comfortable for you.
Okay.
Can you tell yet, if you were to keep doing this for a while, where would you feel the pain or the burning?
Well, I felt it most in my legs.
Which part?
In my quads. Actually, no, it was more like the inner inside of the front of my legs, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then also my glutes a little bit.
Okay. And then would you be comfortable just doing a stationary lunge?
Yeah.
Not alternating, just start with one leg and do a few on that side until you can tell where it would be uncomfortable.
So it feels like the exact same place.
Okay.
Although my quad as well. And then I felt pulling across, I don't even want to say my abdomen. It was almost like below my stomach. I don't know if that's just like your lower abs, like where they connect.
Mm-hmm.
But that was actually like really tight and pulley.
Okay. Do you want to take a few on the other leg just to balance yourself out?
Yeah. So on that side, I'm feeling everything the same, but also like right around my tailbone.
Okay. Now I'm going to have you do a few breaths, just standing.
Okay.
Try to go back to the breathing that you were doing when you were laying down.
It's so hard to relax my stomach. It is so hard when I'm standing up.
So just try to let your whole stomach relax. Don't hold it.
It is so hard. Oh my gosh, I'm shocked by this. Okay.
You're being the bamboo. We're being the bamboo. It's working its way down there. So when you breathe in, I just want you to completely let the belly go.
This is like shockingly difficult. I feel like I'm like trying to do sit-ups or something. It is incredibly difficult to relax when I'm standing up. I feel like tension in my shoulders. I'm like trying to fight all of it and let go just so I can breathe.
Some of that might be related to part of the back pain that you're getting.
Like it feels like my abs are like stretching as I'm breathing because they're like, what is this? What's happening? Because I'm like, I mean, my stomach is probably out like an inch farther than it normally is. Like even being pregnant, I'm always holding it in. It feels good. Like it's funny because I will take times throughout the day where I'll like lean down. It's easier if I'm not standing up. I'll lean like on the counter like this and just let my stomach hang. I can tell my body needs that. It's just very difficult for me to do when I'm standing up, which I'm obviously doing like a lot of my day.
Right. And you will be doing probably during a lot of your labor too.
Yeah.
It's something that we want to have you working on before labor gets here so that you're more comfortable breathing down in that area and just feeling what's happening there. So you're not unconsciously holding that area like that during labor.
Yeah. Which I'm sure I was in my last labor. I can be pretty certain about that.
So I think for you, we might need to just have you work on it. Well, not just work on it, continue to work on it standing up, but we're probably going to need to work on it more laying down.
Okay.
Because that's where your stomach is more relaxed.
Yeah.
And it's for most people, it's easier to breathe into the diaphragm when they're laying down.
Yeah.
And then just work on the lifting up the foot thing. And as you're getting used to connecting in your legs with your abdomen, you'll be able to translate it to standing up.
Cool.
We'll start there.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
I'm glad we did that though. That was very insightful. Like that alone will give me something to focus on.
Yeah. And then we can work on bringing the other things in when the breath is a little more relaxed.
Yeah.
So any questions on that, or does that seem pretty, you know what you need to be working on?
Yeah. No, I think I feel good. I feel good about that. And I'll keep working on that.
Okay. So then some nutrition. My main concern generally for pregnancy, especially going into the third trimester, because you're 26 weeks, so you're right there on that cusp now, is protein intake.
Uh-huh.
Any idea how much protein you get right now on a daily basis, average?
I try to focus on it. I mean, I could tell you with full confidence that I get more than 50 grams of protein a day, but that just varies day to day. But I know I always get that much because I do try and focus on it.
Okay. So I would recommend that you be at right now aiming for between 70 and 100 grams.
Okay, yeah.
And then over the next 6 weeks or so to gradually increase that to up around 140.
Oh, wow.
Grams per day. Yeah.
Okay.
I find that, as long as everything is healthy as far as kidneys when they're doing your, are you doing the urine test when you go into the midwife?
Yeah.
No problems there?
No.
Okay. Then I find that helps to just make sure that the uterus has all of those amino acid building blocks that it's going to need for just maintaining strength and integrity. It's going to make sure you have sufficient collagen for maintaining healthy skin, healthy muscles, and then just to start building up that long burning energy source that you're going to need during labor. Being able to do it now in the weeks, months, since we still have months before labor comes, it's going to just allow you to start to store that up, but slowly building it up. Right now, since you're only at the beginning of the third trimester, that 70 to 100 is still okay. And then just slowly ramping it up a little bit more over the next 6 weeks. So as far as protein amounts, do you have an idea of how much protein is in different servings? Do you have a list?
Yeah, for the most part, I actually am. I have been somewhat of a nutrition fanatic. I'm really comfortable with knowing what kind of in a serving of peanuts or almonds or an egg, and yeah.
Great. So we won't go over that. And there's stuff in the course. There's a nutrition program.
Yeah, I'm really excited actually to get to that.
There's specifics in there if you feel like you want to overview that. But if you have resources already, it's pretty straightforward. Your average animal protein serving is about 20 grams of protein in like a 3 to 4 ounce piece. Eggs run around 6 grams a piece. An ounce of nuts about 6 grams. So you can keep track of that. Cool. And then fish and fish oil, do you guys eat fish regularly?
I would not use the word regularly. We do eat it though. I would say we eat it less than once a week though, like probably twice a month. And I do take a fish oil supplement.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. And then do you get other healthy fat sources, butter, coconut oil?
I do a lot of avocados.
Okay. Great.
I do eat butter, but limitedly. My fat probably mostly comes from olive oil and avocados. I use coconut oil very limitedly because I really struggle with the flavor of it, which is really struggle with it. Don't eat much dairy. And I do nuts, so like peanuts and almonds.
Okay. So then hydration. How do you feel like you're doing on that?
I can easily do 100 ounces a day. Water is never an issue for me. My last pregnancy, my midwife always says a gallon a day. I struggled with getting above the 100-ounce mark. That last 28 ounces to get to a gallon, I almost never hit. But I would say daily, I easily drink 90 to 100 ounces.
And are you getting other things besides water, or are you primarily a water drinker?
Primarily a water drinker. I drink some black coffee, like half a cup, a couple times a week. I also will drink a cup of Earl Grey a couple times a week too, but I don't drink a caffeinated beverage every day. And if I do, like, they're both just black. I don't put anything in them. I will add to water. I try to do it once a day. I don't always remember, but I don't know if you're familiar with the Noon electrolyte tablets. I used them when I was training for my half marathon, and so that's just what I'm familiar with. And so I try and do that once a day because, and I honestly don't even remember why, but in the beginning of my pregnancy, I was talking to my midwife about something, and she had just said, like, make sure you're getting enough electrolytes. So since then, I've been trying to remember to do that at least once a day.
Okay, good. And that's feeling good?
Yeah.
Okay. Then the only other thing on my mind to address is sleep. I know it's hard because you have a 2-year-old.
The 2-year-old actually is not the problem. Just being pregnant is the problem. She is an incredible sleeper, but I had the same issue when I was pregnant with her. I had really severe prenatal insomnia. With both my pregnancies, literally starting 6 weeks in, I couldn't sleep more than a couple hours a night for all of my first trimester. I started sleeping a little bit better outside of my first trimester up until about 20 weeks. So I was probably sleeping more like 7 hours a night from about 15 to 20 weeks. And since 20-ish weeks, I've really been struggling again. I just can't stay asleep. I fall asleep no problem unless I don't do like my normal routine because I'm just so like habitual. But I oftentimes wake up in between like 12 and 1 and then have a really hard time falling asleep. So I've been trying to go to bed earlier so I can take advantage of the fact that I'm sleeping great until about 12 and 1. But I would say most often I'm in bed from like 9 to 5. That's the time I have to sleep. So I would say the last handful of weeks I've been sleeping like 4 to 6 hours.
So you're even fighting your north in your sleep.
Yes. And that is having a hard time sleeping it's not just localized to when I'm pregnant. It gets very severe when I'm pregnant, but I've struggled with it since I was a kid.
Are you taking any supplements besides the fish oil and you're doing a prenatal?
Yeah, like I take prenatal, I take Calm magnesium powder. Okay. I take that daily. I take an iron supplement. I take an additional vitamin D.
Okay, you're already doing the magnesium.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem to make any difference?
No, and my midwife is like, you can take up to like 1,000 milligrams, and I do take quite a bit. It helps marginally, but the sleep thing is like, it's the worst part about being pregnant. I had some success with a magnesium spray, actually. Pink Stork makes a magnesium spray, and you like rub it on the bottom of your feet. And that actually, I was very skeptical because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work. But I actually had a fair amount of success with that helping in my first trimester. And I honestly, because I started sleeping a little bit better from like 15 to 20 weeks, I haven't tried it again.
So then that's an option. Epsom salt bath could be an option then if you are better at absorbing magnesium through your skin than you are orally.
Oh, that's a good idea.
If you feel like the one you applied worked better.
Yeah.
The other thing, do you get any heart palpitations, like flutters?
Yes, but not frequently.
Okay. Do you guys eat potatoes, or do you do bananas a lot?
We do not eat a ton of potatoes. We eat like a lot more brown rice when it comes to the carb portion of our meals. And I do not eat very many bananas, no. I actually have liked them in this pregnancy. I typically am not a huge banana fan, but I have been enjoying them and eating more in this pregnancy, but not like probably a couple a week.
It might be that it's not magnesium and that you might be running a bit low on potassium. So those would be some of your higher potassium foods, green leafy things as well. But to really kind of get a big punch of it, try bananas for a few days, maybe before
Okay.
bed, and see if in a week or so of doing that, if that's helping you
Okay.
sustain a little bit more sleep.
Although I will say that you mentioned like leafy greens, and I really struggle with vegetables in general when I'm pregnant.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
have
yeah.
a strong vegetable aversion when I'm pregnant. And my husband was very uncomfortable with it in my first pregnancy.
Mm.
He went to one of my appointments with my midwife and was like, how do I get her to eat more vegetables? And probably around 20 weeks, I was able to start eating vegetables. So I'm doing better now, but I have no palate for them at all.
Mm-hmm.
I like when I was doing the flavor exercise from module 2, I was actually pleasantly surprised that I could like chew the plain arugula and not gag.
Aha.
I was very pleasantly surprised. That was a fun exercise. I really liked doing that. But I wouldn't be surprised if the lack of those things in my diet, because before I'm pregnant, like a typical breakfast for me, or like even a snack in the middle of the afternoon, would be like a bed of spinach or arugula with 2 fried eggs on top.
Do you take bone broth?
I don't, and it's literally on my shopping list. I wanted to talk to someone a little bit more about it, because you hear about bone broth and I know it's good for you. I've heard some people say it tastes horrible, and so I don't know, like, is it worth buying? Like, I know Costco carries like just an organic pre-made bone broth. Should I buy that, or should I actually take the time to make it?
Mm-hmm. As far as taste goes, I think making it always tastes way better.
Okay.
So if you feel like you have the time to make it, you're going to get a lot more flavor out of it. And
Okay.
it's definitely cheaper to make it.
Yeah.
You can you can buy bones specifically for it, but if you roast a chicken, just save the bones
Okay.
and make bone broth out of that. And do you have a slow cooker or an instant pot?
I have a slow cooker.
Yeah, so you can just make it in the slow cooker overnight. Just put the bones in there and
Okay.
cover it with water, put a little bit of apple cider vinegar or some kind of vinegar in it, and then you
Okay.
can season it to taste. You can put veggies in it if you want to.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I've been dying to ask someone about it. I know there's huge health benefits and I've just never looked into it. I heard someone, I think it was maybe on a birth hour episode actually, talking about sipping it during during labor.
During labor,
I was like, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I should, because I had no appetite
Right.
with my daughter, and I remember people saying like, oh, I wish the hospitals would let you eat, and I remember thinking like, how would you eat anyway?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so
You'll
I
hear
had
that
thought,
mentioned. You'll hear that mentioned in the labor part of the course of it's maybe not that big of a deal because even if you have an appetite, often you're not keeping it down anyway.
oh, right.
If you
So
try
yeah,
to eat.
I had thought that would be a really awesome thing to have available during labor.
Yeah. And drinking a cup of that a day starting now, it's going to give you a little bit of protein and it's going to have some of the mineral
Okay.
content that we're looking for. It doesn't have a lot of vitamin content by the time it's been cooked for
Right.
12 hours, but it's still going to retain some of the minerals out of the marrow and the bone.
Okay.
So you'll get that. You'll get the collagen protein factor.
Sounds good. I think between that, my breathing, and then just continuing to go through the course, that gives me some stuff to work on.
Yeah, I know. You have a lot of homework this week.
That's perfect. I did have one question actually. So
Yeah.
in the course, there is the birth partner portion.
Yes.
So I'm working on getting my husband to do that. There was no way I was going to get him to sit and do the entire
Yeah.
the whole course with me. I totally recommend it, and I think it's awesome. I just know like it was pulling teeth enough to get him to go and do like a childbirth course before, which he ended up being awesome and just having a super positive attitude about. But I had wondered if not only him, but if I'm considering having one of my sisters at the birth. Is that something that would be beneficial to have like other people in your birth team to go through?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And that video itself is really only 10 or 15 minutes. It more explains. So it'll kind of give them the basic idea of what you're going through in the course.
Okay.
And it will kind of encourage them to do it with you and why it's important for them to do it with you. So having him just sit down for that 10 or 15 minutes. I can't remember the exact timestamp on it, and then there's a little booklet, short, just kind of goes through the different compass directions and the assessment and why it's recommended for them to do it, for them to really be able to be in the same place as you, because by the time you finish the course, you have this whole other language.
Yeah.
So in order for the two of you to really be able to communicate in this new way, that you understand the cycle and you understand where things are going in the birth, and if he hasn't done any of the course, he's going to be lost, and he's not going to be able to support you in the same way. When I've had couples where they've both gone through it, they're in their own world because they both understand this cycle, even though like their midwives haven't done it, their doula hasn't done it, just the two of them can work together on this whole other level that everybody else isn't really there in that way. Like the two of them can really partner and get you through this. So having him watch that video might encourage him, or might make him want to do the course because he'll want to see what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I asked you because I didn't open it, so I didn't know how long it was. So that's probably just enough to even pique his curiosity.
That's why I put it in there.
That's perfect. No, I love that. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm glad I asked you that then.
Yeah, see if he'll just tell him he just needs to watch this 10 or 15 minute video, and then he might start asking you about the rest of the course, and maybe he'll jump on board, and you'll be able to kind of pull out the things that are maybe going to be more important for him. So some of the videos you can just explain to him, and he may not have to sit through all of them, and he won't have to do all of the exercises if he doesn't want to. But having the basic understanding of the different directions and how that's going to play out in labor. And the emotions, the submerged and expressed emotion part, because that's going to apply to him too, and how the two of you relate to one another. And like you said, even as you're going into parenting, how it's going to come out in the parents that you want to be.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because he'll totally watch that. He knows I'm going through it, but hopefully that'll even make him a little bit more interested in the content, because I have not talked to him about the specifics of it very much.
Okay, well, that was a good session today, Starre. I think you have a lot of homework to work on this week until we meet again next time.
Yes, absolutely. I really enjoyed everything we went through today, and I'm just excited to continue working through this.
Great. I'm excited to see what you come up with by the time we meet next.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this coaching session. If you would like to be considered for a coaching call on this podcast, visit naturalbirthcompass.com/podcast. Fill out our questionnaire, including your contact info, and I will be in touch. Finally, if you want to show our amazing guest some love for being vulnerable on this show and allowing us all to learn along with her, leave a comment or a review for this podcast, or share it with someone you love who will benefit as well. Need to reach me? Find me on the socials at Natural Birth Compass, or visit the website naturalbirthcompass.com. See you again next time on your journey to birth.